Sweet. And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Some Debates. I'm your fellow co-host Dibo, doing another solo episode. Hey, man, my apologies on not making um, last week's episode for you guys. Very busy, had a ton of things catch up to me. And shoot, yeah, man, it just happens like that. But we're back here again in the studio, just like we have been for the majority of the summer. It's Tuesday, August 13th, less than a week away from me going back to school for the fall semester, my junior year. Crazy how time works like that, but as of right now, we're still here. We're going to keep pumping out this content. And yeah, man, for this one, I hope y'all enjoy it. Olympics have passed. It was a good one in France. A lot of great athletes showed up. Obviously, USA basketball, both women and men's, they pulled it off against France. Steph Curry, that performance was incredible. One of the best games I've ever seen from him. That and the Serbia game too as well. Those two games in general were just phenomenal to watch as a fan, man. But yeah, that was incredible. That was one of my favorite parts about this year's edition. Track and field showed off, gymnastics showed out. An overall great spectacle for the world to see, especially in America. We tied with China for the most golds in the French Olympics. So, hey man, again, great showing. And 4 years away from 2028 for basketball, both men and women's, is going to be another great one again. A little bit of a changing of the guard for both teams, but hey, there's a bunch of talent regardless, so it's going to be a fun one in on home soil. So I can't wait for that. But with today's episode, it shouldn't be too long, but just the only segment I have, which is going to be the main segment, we're doing NFL team tiers heading into the 2024 season. Shoot, man, we less than a month away from football. I cannot wait. Oh, man. Last week, preseason started. We had a lot of QBs show out, had some great performances. Guys like J.J. McCarthy, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix showed some flashes. Jaden Daniels had a nice bomb in his first game against the Jets. So this rookie class, man, it's going to be something. Got a lot of potential, so I can't wait. Once the actual season starts, we're going to see these guys more and more playing to their new schemes, their new systems with their new teams. It's going to be a blast to watch, so I can't wait for that. But right now, we got our tier rankings we're going to cook up. I got 5 tiers for you guys right now, from worst to best. Trash, we're going to start with the trash tier first, and then all the non-playoff teams in the second tier, and then following up after that, the playoff teams, and then the second to best, dark horse contenders for the Super Bowl. And the last one is tile favorites for this year. So let me get the screen record cooking. Gotta press record on this. And yeah, we about to record. Yeah, let's just go into this. I got my notes with me already. Pull up the computer. Yeah, let's start this. So going to the trash tier, I got 4 teams in here for this one, and we are going to start off with the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton's second year with the team. Obviously, the Russell Wilson era is no more. One of the worst free agent signings, one of the worst trades of all time has passed. And for Denver this year, they're in a rebuilding phase, losing guys like Justin Simmons within this team just signifies a huge breakoff of talent compared to last year. Offensively, I believe is going to be their strong suit, The O line is still intact. You got guys like Garrett Bowles with that unit who are consistently solid year in, year out. But you look at the skill positions, not that great at all. Wide receiver is a weakness. Cortland Sutton as my wide receiver one. Not feeling about that. Not feeling good about that. Troy Franklin looks to be a good draft pick from Oregon. Obviously, he got the chemistry between him and new rookie quarterback Bo Nix, who is likely going to be the starter and is a good scheme fit within Sean Payton's offense and how he runs it. But other than that, offensively, talent-wise is very weak, especially defensively too. Looking at that side of the ball, they're not going to get a lot of turnovers like they did last year, which that was the huge thing with them getting that winning streak. There's obviously going to be regression there. The secondary outside Patrick Surtain is going to be really poor, in my opinion. Limited pass rush, not a ton of talented assets within this team in general. So I expect Denver to finish last in the AFC West and also be one of the worst teams in the league this season, competing for that number one draft pick. And then moving on, let's head to the NFC. We got the Washington Commanders. Made a lot of splashes. Adam Peters, their GM from San Fran 49ers, made a ton of splashes. But they were basing it off of veteran leadership, which for a young team, especially the season they had last year under Ron Rivera, was not good, especially toward the end. So bringing in vets like Bobby Wagner, especially on that defensive side of the ball, it is important when it comes to that. Zach Ertz got signed too as well. But just looking at this team, man, they're a couple years away from being really competitive. The pass rush is very weak when you have Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler Jr. as your two best edge rushers. You're in for a ton of trouble. Secondary is not very good at all. Lost Kendall Fuller. Emmanuel Forbes, their first round pick last year. He's had a very bad camp. I don't know if you guys have seen, but the clips that have been accumulated of him just getting burnt day to day in camp and preseason as well. He got burnt too for a touchdown. It's not looking good for him. Hoping for the best, but again, that's a weakness within their team. Offensively, you still got Terry McLaurin leading the way. Hopefully, Jahan Dotson can have a bounce back year at the wide receiver position. The running game, I think, is projected to be very poor. I did not like the Austin Eckler signing, even though he's supposed to be the secondary change of pace back within that unit. O-line still very mediocre, beside new signing Tyler Biadasz at center and Samuel Cosme. So, yeah, the Commanders, even with Dan Quinn, Cliff Kingsbury, and their coaching staff, they're going to be very poor this year, in my opinion. But I think the goal for Washington heading to this season is, one, can Jaden Daniels, their new quarterback, show enough flashes as the starter? And two, can Dan Quinn place a culture within this team, especially post Dan Snyder being the owner of Washington? So that's what I'm looking for with this Washington unit. But other than that, I think they're going to be a bottom feeder this year. Okay, last two. Let's start off with the New York Giants. Daniel Jones is the starting quarterback. Obviously, with him being there, leading the way, he puts a huge cap on this team's potential, even though their pass rush is very, very deadly. Bringing in Brian Burns in that huge deal from Carolina, and also having Sexy Dexter Lawrence, and Kayvon Thibodeau on the outside as well. Malik Neighbors, much needed explosiveness on the outside. Also expecting Wando Robinson and Jalen Hyatt to step up within the receiving core. But again, Daniel Jones being your starting QB in the division where you have a completely healthy Eagles unit as well as the Dallas Cowboys, it puts you at a massive disadvantage. Even though I do like David even though I do like Brian Dibo as a play caller in this league, yeah, man, it's not looking good for that Giants team. And I think this will be the last year of the Daniel Jones era in New York. Okay, last one with the trash tier is going to be an AFC team, and I have the New England Patriots. Gerard Mayo, first year head coach for this team, in house hire, was the defensive coordinator for the past couple seasons. I think he'll be good for this team when it comes to one schematic issues as well as bringing in a new culture post Bill Belichick era. Obviously, him playing alongside Bill Belichick within that dynasty run, I think it will be very crucial for him getting his words across with this new and very young team. Defensively, it's still going to be the strong point of this squad. Although the Christian Barmore news, him being out indefinitely with blood clots, does hurt this team a lot. He is a complete game wrecker in that interior D line, so losing him is very huge for this team. But they still got a lot of talented pieces. Obviously, at corner, Christian Gonzalez, who was phenomenal in his limited time last year as a rookie, is going to be back fully healthy. So you still got Matthew Judon leading the way. Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar is one of the best safety duos in the entire league. Jonathan Jones on the outside is a very good corner. So it's still going to be a great strong point within this team. Offensively, that's a huge question mark, especially with the wide receiver core. I do like Jalen Polk and Javon Baker as rookies, but I just don't see them emerging this season, especially becoming that primary wide receiver within that unit. Got some other good pieces like Pop Douglas and Kenny Bourne, but I think they're going to struggle throughout. I think they're going to be one of the worst offensive teams in the league easily. Jacoby Brissett, solid bridge quarterback, but that's not going to be enough to help out this team. So I fully expect the Patriots to have another down year. Even though with Mayo as the quarterback, I expect their culture to be placed. It's going to be another down year in New England. And next year, hopefully, Drake May can take over the reins and become their new franchise quarterback. Man, my phone keeps turning off for some reason, man. I don't know why. This is where I got all my notes, by the way, y'all. I think with, me facing the camera, I think it would be really more convenient to put the phone down right here and just read off my phone rather than just like turning my head to the side and looking at the computer, see what I wrote down and doing that from there. So I don't think y'all cared, but I just wanted to explain to y'all why I'm doing this. Again, you guys don't care, most likely, but hey, that's how I'm doing it. Okay. Next tier, we have the non-playoff teams. And to start off, I'm going back to the NFC and talking about the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray, his first full year back as a starting quarterback from his ACL tear. He's going to be one of the most dynamic weapons in this league again, especially when you have a new weapon on the outside. Maserati Marv, shout out Gus Johnson, Marvin Harrison Jr. He is going to be a special guy at wide receiver. He is going to be a special talent for this Cardinals team, who had one of the worst receiving cores last year, without a doubt. So Kim and Kyler, the connection between the two is going to be electric. And having guys like Michael Wilson, who I'm very high on, Greg Dortch in the slot, I think that makes up for a very formidable wide receiver unit throughout the entire league. And with the run game, I think it will continue to be a strong suit for this team. It was going to be the biggest strength for this unit. Drew Peltzing, I think he needs to be talked about he needs to be talked a lot more as a play caller. I think he's one of the Well, he is the most underrated offensive coordinator in this league by far. How he was able to make that run game such an elite unit with James Conner last year, especially with Kyler being back, was remarkable, and I think that's going to continue this year as well. Along with you having a guy like Paris Johnson at left tackle, your franchise cornerstone on that O line. He's gonna have a ton of more progression. So I think the Cardinals' offense is gonna be very electric. They're gonna score a lot of points. They're gonna be very fun to watch every Sunday when they're able to play. But just me not being able to put this team as a true playoff team this season, it's gonna be a lot on the defense. They made a ton of moves this free agency period in the offseason, getting guys like Sean Murphy Bunting, a few other vets as well. Got Mac Wilson on that linebacking core, but I just don't think they'll be as impactful. They got a few young pieces to build around that unit, especially Zayvon Collins. But again, man, I expect the defense to struggle a ton this season, despite Sean, not Sean, Jonathan Gannon building a scrappy unit, even though they weren't the most talented last year in his first season as the head coach of this team. But other than that, I think they'll be able to contend around that 6-7 spot in the NFC down the stretch this season. But again, those defensive weaknesses is going to really affect my thoughts on them being an actual playoff team. But if we can see more progression, if we see Marvin Harrison being the wide receiver, which he's been hyped up to be his entire collegiate career, alongside Kyler Murray, if the offense can continue to click, I think that would be a season of success for this Arizona team this season. So I can't wait for that. Next team going to the AFC. Man, it's kind of weird. I'm just bouncing over from NFC, AFC, NFC, AFC. I think that's a very common pattern for this this episode. I didn't make it that way. It just happened like that, but kind of coincidence. But the next team I'm going to talk about is the Tennessee Titans. First year head coach Brian Callahan is the new guy post Mike Vrabel era. They got him from the Bengals as he was their OC during his time in Cincinnati. He's going to establish the run, zonal schemes, brought in Tony Pollard to help that out. He's going to be the Joe Mixon within that unit. In my opinion, I expect Tony Pollard to have the same struggles as he did back in Dallas last year. He's just not a pure bell cow running back. He's not a pure number one. I think Tajik Spears is going to have a big impact within that running back core to balance it out. But with Pollard, I don't expect a ton of sparks from him. The offense is still going to be very solid in my opinion. Obviously, you have Will Levis in his first year as the starting quarterback. A ton of flashes with Levis last year. A ton of poor spots with him as well throughout his tenure, having limited game time, starting for that Titans team. I think with more reps, a much better receiving core, adding in a guy like Calvin Ridley to that unit, I think we'll see more improvement from Will Levis. So I fully expect this Tennessee team to have a fairly formidable offensive unit this season. Defensively, I know they have Jeffrey Simmons still, Harold Landry as well, makes a very formidable pass rush. But with this Titans whole unit defensively, even though they added L'Jarius Sneed, which that was huge for their corner group, I still see a ton of holes within that unit that makes me feel like, yeah, I'm going to put them down towards the bottom of that AFC South, making them one of the worst teams in the league. They're still going to be very competitive because of their offense in my eyes. They're going to be very scrappy. But again, weaknesses on the defensive side of the ball. Putting such a heavy load on a guy in Will Levis with limited experience in the pro level to carry a team in such a stacked division in the AFC South. The three other teams are going to be in the playoff hunt throughout this season when healthy. So that puts the Titans at a massive disadvantage. And yeah, that's what makes me want to put them in the non-playoff tier. Next one, we're going back to the NFC, and I have the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, the biggest storyline within this Carolina team heading into this season was all the improvements they've made offensively, helping out Bryce Young. Dave Canales, the new head coach for this team, first year head coach. Hey, he's a QB guru. He's a QB whisperer, and we've seen throughout his entire career, whether it was in Seattle helping out Geno Smith, he had his bounce back year that season, and last year in Tampa Bay helping out Baker Mayfield, he arguably had his best year as a professional quarterback. And fast forward in Carolina, you're expecting Bryce Young with Canales, leading the way, and a ton of new weapons throughout this receiving core. Xavier Legette through the draft, that was a good pick in my opinion. Deontay Johnson bringing in a very good separator, which that Panthers team last year was not good at separation at all on the outside. So he's going to help them out a ton this year. And the O-line as well, getting in good interior linemen like Damian Lewis from Seattle, Robert Hunt from Miami as well, helping Bryce Young stay clean and healthy within the pocket, which I don't know about you guys, but last year when he watched Carolina play, a ton of the pressure when it came to blitzes and other things like that, they came in through the interior. And for Bryce Young being already an undersized quarterback, not having the athleticism like Kyler Murray, that's not going to help him out when it comes to growing as a quarterback within the NFL. So I think all these moves together, the Panthers are going to be a lot better offensively this year. And I fully expect Bryce Young to take a big stride as the Panthers franchise QB this season. Defensively, a lot of pieces are gone. Most importantly, Brian Burns. That's what's going to put this team at a massive disadvantage. I do like their DC in Evero from the Broncos. They're still going to be scrappy, but again, the lack of defensive talent, especially in the pass rush, that's a huge question mark. I think that's going to really hinder them when it comes to being a full playoff team within the NFC. Although, an advantage they do have, they're in the NFC South, which is the worst division in the entire league, in my opinion. I could possibly see a world where the Panthers, they scrap by at 9-8. They can make the playoffs through winning the division and go from there. And that's what we saw with Tampa Bay as well last year. They were projected to finish the season well, like 4 or 5 wins. Had a great year, was offensively especially, and made the playoffs at 9-8. That was the record. So I think that's the absolute floor. Not floor, the absolute ceiling for this Panthers team. But I'm going to be a little conservative with my pick and putting them in this non-playoff tier. Keeping in with the NFC, I have the Chicago Bears as well. Hey, man, they had a ton of headlines this year. Obviously, they got Caleb Williams with the first overall pick. Got Keenan Allen in that big trade with the Chargers. Rome Odunze in the draft as well. He's going to be very huge for this Bears team. A lot of other splash moves. Got DeAndre Swift to help out the backfield. Offensively, even though I don't really like Shane Waldron as a coordinator, especially with the work he did in Seattle last year, although it is a massive upgrade over Luke Getsy, I do expect him to have a ton of growing pains with this Bears offensive unit, them trying to gel this team together offensively. I think that's going to be a big thing that people open up to throughout the year. Defensively, still got a ton of talent. Got Montez Sweat from Washington, that huge trade last season. He's going to be huge for this pass rush on a D line that is not very talented at all. But other than that, look at this whole defensive team. Lots of bright spots within all three phases. Jalen Johnson as well. Tremaine Edmonds. They're going to lead the way. They're talented enough to be a playoff team, but I just think with their coaching staff, the quality of their coaching staff, again, having Shane Waldron calling plays, Matt Eberflus, I'm not that high on as a head coach in this league, especially when it comes to game management. I think that's going to be the difference maker when it comes to them making the playoffs or not. And that matters especially when they're in a division in the AFC, NFC North, when all the other three teams have as much talent, if not more, as them, while also having much better coaching staffs. So for the Bears, they're going to be very fun. Offensively, they should be very solid on paper, but again, I expect them to finish outside the playoffs, probably around 7-8 wins this year. Where we at? 26 minutes. Let's go. All right. Next one, keeping with the NFC theme, I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. My biggest concern this season for this unit is the loss of Dave Canales, which I said before, he was a big reason why Baker had his marquee year last season. You take that away, man, and although the Bucs, they didn't really change much within their personnel, overall, although they did lose Carlton Davis to Detroit, which for Davis, he was a very big corner within their defense for the past couple seasons, it's still pretty much the same team. But again, them losing Canales, while also Todd Bowles, I'm not that very high on as a head coach, even though they made the playoffs last year. I do expect them to have that regression dating back to Tom Brady's last year with Tampa Bay, where they finished 9-8 and barely squeaked by in the NFC South. Although I do not expect that to happen when you have the Atlanta Falcons, who got massively way better, especially in the quarterback position this year. We'll talk about Atlanta later, but I think those changes I mentioned, that's going to really hinder Tampa Bay from making the playoffs this year. Let's go back to the AFC. I have the San Diego. I said San Diego. Oh my God, I said San Diego. I have the LA Chargers. Yes, said that properly. The LA Chargers in this tier. The Jim Harbaugh era has officially begun. A new culture has been put in place, a new mindset. Obviously, with him getting Greg Roman, his former OC, back when he coached the Niners, they're going to run the ball a ton. And them getting J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards from Baltimore, that signifies that even more, even though they have Justin Herbert. Talking about them offensively, wide receiver it's a big ass question mark, man. I do not trust your wide receivers at all. I love Ladd McConkey. I think he's gonna be great as a rookie this season, but you look throughout that entire unit, man, it is pitiful. It is really, really pitiful. Like Josh Palmer having an important role like he's gonna have this year, that's a huge sign of concern, man. Defensively, I don't think that's gonna mask all of their weakness on offense as well. Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, when healthy, are a great pass rush duo, but again, their health is still a huge question mark. Secondary, especially within their corners, they do have Derwin James, Asante Samuel Jr. I think that's going to be a weakness within this entire team as a whole, too. Yeah, man, they're a year or two from being a full playoff team, even contender within the league, man. Herbert, when fully healthy, is gonna keep them in games like he's always had his entire career. But again, man, just the sheer lack of talent really puts me in a spot to where I'm not picking San Diego to go to the playoffs this year, especially in the AFC where you have around 10 teams, 9, 10 teams that could possibly make the playoffs. So I have the Chargers being outside that this year. Moving on to another AFC team, I have the Indianapolis Colts. They've been making a lot of noise, man, especially with the return of Anthony Richardson. He showed a lot of promise offensively last year, especially in the run game, him being a dual threat. And Shane Steichen's offense, his scheme, which for Shane Steichen, he's already one of the best head coaches, one of the best offensive minds in the entire league. The fact that the Colts are still a very competent unit without Anthony Richardson having Gardner Minshew be the starting quarterback for most of the season and missing Jonathan Taylor for huge chunks for last season as well. For them to still be a very cohesive offensive team, it's a sign of, you know, excitement. And they're completely healthy. Michael Pittman's back. They re-signed him to a huge deal. Josh Downs is already one of the better slot threats throughout the entire league. Adonai Mitchell is going to be a big threat when it comes to the deep ball game. And you already have a stacked offensive line led by Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith. Jonathan Taylor's going to be fully healthy this year. You know, he's a great threat coming out the backfield. And you put a behemoth, a 6'5" demon at quarterback who's going to be one of the best dual threats in the entire league. That makes for a very scary offense. My biggest concern is their defense. Their secondary is super, super weak. Juju Brents as their corner one, it's a concern. It is a huge concern for me. That's very weak. Although Kenny Moore is a very solid corner out the nickel, Julian Blackmon is a very solid safety. That is gonna be a very weak core heading into this year. They got some other stars in Grover Stewart, DeForest Buckner in that D line. EJ Speed, Zaire Franklin, I like those two as their linebacking core. But again, man, I don't think the defense is going to be that good, really. And in the AFC South, where they're going to have a harder schedule, they're in a division where you have guys like the Texans and the Jaguars. I know I said the Titans aren't going to make the playoffs, but they're going to be very scrappy this year as well. They're in a very hard division. They made the least amount of improvements compared to all the other teams in the division, and their defense is possibly very suspect as well. So I expect Indy to have a winning record around 9 games, but when it comes to them fully making the playoffs, I just don't see it. Although their offense is going to be very, very fun if everyone stays healthy, especially with Richardson and Taylor. All right. Going to the NFC, this is going to shock a lot of you guys watching this, but I have the Dallas Cowboys not making the playoffs. I've said this before in the offseason earlier. I do not trust this Dallas team at all, even though they're in the same division as the Giants and the Commanders. They're going to finish around 9 games. The offense, if CeeDee Lamb can, work out his contract disputes ongoing right now, alongside Dak Prescott, they're going to keep afloat. But again, man, when it comes to their depth, their linebacking core is super weak, in my opinion, man. Super, super weak. Run D is still very suspect. They need Mozzie Smith to step up within that interior badly. I talked good about the offensive unit, man, but when you have a running back core led by Ezekiel Elliott in 2024, along with Rico Dowdle, that's not good, man. That's a huge yikes to me. And wide receiving core, obviously you got CeeDee Lamb when healthy, but outside of that, I really don't like that unit, man. Brandon Cooks has passed it. They need Jalen Tolbert, which he's had a very good camp. He's gonna emerge within that team, but I'm not very confident within the wide receiver core aside Lamb. Jake Ferguson's gonna be a big part of this offense, but again, man, I really do not trust this Dallas team. I think their window with this current unit has pretty much been shut, for now. And shoot, man, I just really don't see it. I really, really don't see it, man, with this Cowboys team. It's especially when it comes to Brian Schottenheimer. I just don't see it. I really don't see it. Brian Schottenheimer, their OC, I just don't see it, man. So I expected the Cowboys to miss the playoffs this year. Another shock to you guys as well in the AFC. I have the Dolphins missing the playoffs as well too, and I think it's gonna be the same situation with Dallas, where they finish around 9 games. But when it comes to the amount of weaknesses within this team, O line is very suspect. They really need to bank on Teron Armstead being healthy, which he hasn't shown that ability in these past few years. Their pass rush is very boom or bust. Jalen Phillips, they need a big showing from him this year from his Achilles tear. He's back in training right now. Got medically cleared for that. Chop Robinson's going to have a huge impact on the edge as well, especially without Bradley Chubb. Who knows when he'll be back in this season. They still have a lot of high-end talent. Obviously, wide receiver, they got Hill and Waddle. In their secondary, it's a strong suit. Got Jalen Ramsey and Kendall Fuller as their new signing. I don't really like Jordan Poyer in that safety core. I don't think he's the same guy like he was during his prime in Buffalo. But Javon Holland, one of the more underrated safeties in this league, he's gonna take a lot of that load when it comes to that deep coverage. I I just don't see it with Miami. I think, especially when you have the Jets projected to be good this year in that division, they have a very tough schedule um, late in the year as well too. Especially when it comes to playing in colder sites like Green Bay at Lambeau, which for the Dolphins they're not good in the cold as well. When it's below 50 degrees, they're cooked, man. So for Miami, they're still very top heavy. They have a ton of high end talent. Mike McDaniel's gonna be, you know, he's gonna show off his brilliance when calling plays as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they made the playoffs this because of how talented they are again, but I think I wouldn't be surprised when it comes down to week 17, week 18, when they need a win badly, especially against a actual playoff contender. They choke that game and miss out on the playoffs with like around 9, even 10 wins. Let's see. Oh shoot! Oh, I just realized I didn't. I haven't put all the teams in this tier. Oh shoot! I damn. I was focusing too much on this, man. My fault. Um. Yeah, let me do this really quickly, and then we can move on. Wow, I'm an idiot. I'm a dummy, man. Okay, Broncos, and then Cardinals, Titans. I talked about the Chargers. Um, Panthers. That yeah, that sucks. Um, my fault, y'all. My fault. Wow. Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's awkward. That is super awkward. Okay, that aside, let's move on to the next team. I have the Las Vegas Raiders in this tier as well. And the defense, it's still gonna be, the heart and soul of this team. Obviously, the first full year of Antonio Pierce as their head coach. We saw how great of a job he did, especially when implementing a culture. Post Josh McDaniels was able to rally that unit, who were very much on a downward spiral. They were still great defensively. Patrick Graham, their DC, is still back for another term. They did a ton of great work with that unit. Who outside of Max Crosby, which Max Crosby is a beast. We know this already. They weren't the most talented, but they did improve on that unit, bringing in Christian Wilkins especially. Their marquee signing on that D line, him and Max Crosby, they're going to be very dynamic with each other as well too. Offensively, they have some great pieces. Obviously, they got Devontae Adams still. Jacoby Myers is a solid secondary piece. They drafted Brock Bowers in the first round as well. They're going to be in a lot of 12 personnel, multiple tight end sets with him and Meyer within that tight end core as well too. Their quarterback play, man, I don't trust that at all. Minshew is going to most likely be the starter, but I don't trust him as well. I think he's really overrated when it comes to being a bridge quarterback within the league. Shane Steichen, man, he covered a lot of Minshew's deficiencies as a quarterback last year within the Colts, man. I think the scheme really helped him out a lot, and you put him on a team where he's not gonna have that luxury, and his play caller is going to be Luke Getsy, which Luke Getsy, as you know, during his work with Chicago, he's not very good at all. So I expect Minshew to not play well with this Raiders team. But again, they're still going to be very competitive, especially with their defense. They're going to be in a ton of games. But again, man, they just don't got enough firepower to fully compete within the best of the best in the AFC, really. So I expect the Raiders to miss the playoffs again. AFC team again, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Hey, Tomlin's the head coach. If Mike Tomlin's still your head coach, you're going to finish with a winning record. So I expect the Steelers team to get 9, even 10 wins. But when it comes down to it, although defensively, when they have TJ Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick fully healthy, they're going to always be a respectable unit. Cam Hayward as well. I still don't like their corner room. I like Joey Porter Jr., but as a corner one, not sure about that. Dante Jackson as your DB2, corner 2, man. That's horrendous in my opinion. I don't believe in him at all to take on that role. But again, man, Thomas still the head coach. They still got enough top end talent within that defensive unit to still win a ton of games. Offensively, obviously the big move they did was getting Arthur Smith as their OC. One of their big moves actually, which him over Matt Canada is a massive improvement at all. So they're gonna run the ball a ton, which fair enough for them because they have two very capable running backs within that unit, both in Jalen Warren and Najee Harris. Russell Wilson, while I don't think he's really that great of a quarterback at his age in the league, he is still a massive upgrade over Kenny Pickett. And for the Steelers team, that's all that matters. And hypothetically, when you add a guy like Brandon Ayuk to this unit, being that separator, which Ayuk is very elite at doing so, you pair him alongside George Pickens, where he can focus on being a deep threat within this wide receiver core. That's pretty scary. That is very, very scary. But then again, for Pittsburgh, within the AFC, I just think that when you compare them to other teams within that conference, the other teams have more well-rounded, talent on both sides of the ball. They have less holes to pick from, and with that alone, that prevents me from putting the Steelers as a playoff team this year. So I have them being outside the playoffs, although with having a winning record still. Right there. Okay, three more. Let's go. All right, going back to the NFC, I have the Saints being in this tier. Derek Carr is still the quarterback. Not good. Dennis Allen is still the head coach. Also not good. So, yeah. I mean, they're going to have an easy schedule again. Although last year, that was the same thing, and he still missed the playoffs, not having a winning record. So, yeah, man. Not really a ton of personnel changes within that offensive unit. They got Chris Olave still. Alvin Kamara is fully healthy. But overall, it's still a very mediocre offensive core, especially with David Carr as their starting quarterback. Defensively, they're going to bail them out a ton of games throughout this year. That secondary is looking lethal, man. Avante Taylor, Paulson and Dibo. You already have Marshawn Lattimore in that corner room. That's nasty. Tyrann Mathieu has bounced back to being one of the best safeties in the league again. Excuse me. Excuse me. So I fully expect the Saints to still have a very formidable defense this year, even though the pass rush is looking very suspect. Cam Jordan, he's still aging. Chase Young, I'm not that very high on anymore. But the defense is still going to be elite. As a whole, even in the NFC South, very mediocre. So I have the Saints missing the playoffs once again. They need to blow it up badly. Well, that that contending shit's over with, man. Yeah, you gotta pick a side, and they have to pick the rebuilding side. Ooh, damn, I got the sniffles. Damn. Okay. All right. Last two teams with this tier. Let's go with the Minnesota Vikings in the NFC. Man, that JJ McCarthy news, reading that this morning or afternoon actually, that hurt a lot. That hurt a lot, especially when he had a ton of promise, showed a lot of promise. Excuse me, in his first preseason game, the last weekend. Yeah, that really hurts. But with Sam Darnold as starting quarterback, I think he'll do a fine job. He's in a much better scenario in Minnesota compared to his last starting stint in Carolina, where in Carolina, if you didn't remember, he was solid given the weapons he had. So I fully expect Sam Darnold this year to be commendable, especially when you have Jetta still healthy, Jordan Addison as a great wide receiver too. Hawkinson when he comes back from his ACL injury, he's one of the best tight ends in the entire league. They got Aaron Jones from the Packers this offseason. He's gonna be a very good running back when healthy as well. O-line's still very solid, and of course you have Kevin O'Connell as your play caller still, which he's very elite at his job. So I fully expect that Vikings offense to continue to hum this season. And defensively, with Brian Flores as the DC, they're going to be an elite unit still. I did like the pass rush moves they made, getting Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel to help them out even more, especially with the departure of Daniil Hunter. Secondary is still going to be very solid. Linebacking core still solid. Just an overall great defensive unit. It just stings that at the quarterbacking spot with Sam Darnold, they obviously have the worst quarterback in that division. And when you have a ton of firepower, like a Caleb Williams, like a Jordan Love, like a Jared Goff in Detroit, that puts you at a massive disadvantage, even though they're still very talented. So because of that, while I do think they're going to be very competitive still, They're gonna miss the playoffs. I truly believe that they're gonna miss the playoffs. So sucks for them, but it is what it is. And last team in this tier, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Whoo, man. Hey, the biggest question within Jacksonville is obviously in the quarterback position. Is Trevor Lawrence truly the guy? He has shown flashes. The Jaguars did give him that huge extension after his worst year of his career outside of his rookie season. I am a T-Law believer. I truly believe that at his peak, he's a top 10 quarterback. He deserves to be along those top end guys within the NFL. But I just still have a ton of question marks about this team. The receiving core is not moving me a lot. I did not like the Gabe Davis signing at all. Not at all, one bit, man. Shoot, defensively, the secondary is still a massive concern. Outside of Tyson Campbell and Andre Cisco, the pass rush. So we know Josh Hines Allen is one of the premier edge rushers in the entire league, but they truly need another year of improvement from Trayvon Walker if they want to have a respectable pass rush unit, which last year, that was their biggest concern. That was two of their biggest concerns, the secondary and the pass rush. Those two last year were off for that Jaguars team. So they need massive improvements from that unit, especially within Trayvon Walker, alongside that D-line. I will not be surprised, again, if they do make the playoffs, especially if T-Law has another bounce back year. But like I said before, there's just so many things within this team where if they don't hit, especially if T-Law can't bounce back, then we're going to have a problem. So I had the Jaguars missing the playoffs once again this year. Ooh. Dang. Okay. I think the sniffles are gone. Let's go. All right. With these last two tiers, all the teams. Oh no. We still got the playoff teams. My fault. Man, I jumped the gun. All right. Playoff teams. The next tier. Let's start off with the Buffalo Bills. I think a ton of talk within this team was the amount of veteran pieces that they let go, the purge they had. I don't think it's that big of a deal when you look at it, because a ton of the people they let go, like a Jordan Poyer, like a Trey White, I think they're past their peak. I think they really are. So I thought it was the right move for Buffalo to get way younger, especially defensively. And you look at their unit as well. Terrell Bernard, Christian Benford, two pieces when there were a ton of injuries within that team last season. We stepped up within that unit. I think they're going to have a ton of progression this year, especially with Bernard having a guy like Matt Milano return from his injury in that linebacking core. That's going to be very huge, along with having a very good D-line in guys like AJ Espinosa, Ed Oliver as well leading the way. I think the defense is going to continue to be a strong spot for this team. Offensively, it's a lot different, a lot more questions, especially with the wide receiver core. Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir, they need to step up immediately for this team. Josh Allen, when he's completely healthy, offensively, they're going to be humming regardless. But if they want to reach that next level to be emerging as one of the more potent offensive units in the entire league, they got to bank on those two guys in their wide receiver core to really step up alongside James Cook as the lead back. But again, man, because of Josh Allen and his defense, I expect them to win the division again and be in the playoffs formidably. But they just don't got enough talent to truly be a contender this season. I think playoff team is a very good spot for this Buffalo Bills team heading into this year. All right, next one, the in the NFC, I have the Atlanta Falcons making the playoffs. They got some hype. They're getting a lot of hype. Obviously, they got Kirk Cousins from Minnesota. While the Achilles injury still stings, I think Cousins will be a very important quarterback. I think he'll still be very good, especially when you have all these weapons that he has in his arsenal. The big three: Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Bijan Robinson out the backfield. I think that's gonna make for a very explosive offense, especially when you have a guy like Zach Robinson, who is a McVay disciple, coming in as the new play caller with this team. I think they're going to be very dynamic within that side of the ball. Defensively, that is a huge concern for me. Their pass rush, still non-existent. They could have, improved that unit even more by getting Dallas Turner in the first round this year in the draft. But they got Michael Penix. And yeah, I still don't understand that. But it is what it is. And there's still gonna be a horrible pass rush unit. The secondary, I have a ton of concerns as well. Mike Hughes as the cornerback too. That's a yikes for me, man. As a Chiefs fan watching Mike Hughes, he was in the same position for us that year, and he was horrible. So I expect the same thing for him this year with this Falcons team. AJ Terrell being good or not. I don't see the hype with them being a dark horse Super Bowl contender. I think they got too many holes, especially defensively, to prevent them towards being amongst those teams. But with them being in the NFC South in a very weak division, the firepower they have on offense, I think that will be enough for them to make the playoffs this year. Also, dang, why am I blanking on the man's name? No way I'm blanking on the head coach's name. No way I'm blanking on the head coach's name, bro. I'm an idiot. Head coach. Yes, Raheem Morris. Sorry. Defensively, I think Morris will mask a ton of deficiencies within that team. He did a lot of that during his time with the Rams, especially last year. But again, man, I still have a ton of question marks about them talent wise, which makes me this makes me want to put them in the playoff teams tier even more. All right, next one, keeping in the NFC, I have the Seahawks. I have the Seahawks making the playoffs again this year. Offensively, the big changes they made, getting Ryan Grubb from the University of Washington, which if you watch college football a lot last year, Grubb did a phenomenal job with that offensive unit, especially in the passing game. Their passing offense was so dynamic, a ton of great route concepts, were able to bomb it down the field all day long, be primary vertical. And with this Seattle team, I think it's a perfect fit. Having a guy like Geno Smith who drives off of, taking a ton of deep shots when he's clean within the pocket, and their three-headed monster, wide receiver, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and Jackson Smith and Jigba, they're going to fully show their potential as a passing offense. And the running game, you still got Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker Jr. as a very formidable running back core. I think they're going to be very solid as well. The O-line is still a major concern, especially with the loss of Damian Lewis. They need guys like Charles Cross to step up even more, show more improvement. I think that would be a huge make or break for this team and how good their offense could potentially be. Defensively, Mike McDonald, obviously the new head coach, phenomenal hire, going away from the Pete Carroll era. Their defense has a ton of top end talent all across the board. In terms of Wosu, Boye Mafe, Leonard Williams in the secondary, um, Devon Witherspoon, a ton of high value defensive guys. But when it comes to a whole lot of new personnel being changed within this defensive unit, along with having a new coach being put in place, I think they're going to have a ton of struggles to start the year off. But when it comes down to the end of the regular season, I think that's where they're going to fully turn it on. I think in Seattle, they're still in a very hard division. The NFC West is going to be a dogfight this year. But again, man, just the amount of talent they have on both sides of the ball and bringing in a new breath of fresh air in McDonald, too, I think that puts them over the edge and fully makes them a playoff team this year. The last one, this might surprise you guys, but I have the Houston Texans finishing as a standard playoff team, not a dark horse Super Bowl contender, which a ton of people have listed them as for this year. Look, man, I know it's a sexy move having the Texans as a contender this year, but I just really don't see it. The moves they made, especially when it comes to their offense, getting Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon, both of them, I think are very overrated. Stephon Diggs, he's lost a step when it comes to being a top receiver in this league. Joe Mixon, too, as well in this position. I think the running game is still going to be a very mediocre unit as well. CJ Stroud and this passing game, Bobby Slovic, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, fully healthy. I think they're going to mask those deficiencies in the run game as well. But I do expect a regression with CJ Stroud when it comes to him taking care of the football, which for CJ Stroud last year in his rookie season, he protected the ball at such a high rate, near historic. So I really don't expect that same level of success heading into 2024. Defensively, with the Miko Ryans, they're still going to be very solid. More progression from Will Anderson Jr., more progression from Stingley as well. I think he's going to emerge as a top corner in this league too. As their best DB, Jalen Petrie is one of the best safeties in the entire league as well. I think they're going to be a playoff team for sure. But contender for the bowl this year, again, I just really don't see it, especially in a much tougher AFC South this season with way less injuries as well too. Ooh. All right. Those are my playoff teams. Next tier, dark horses. And starting off, I have the Green Bay Packers being in this tier. Jordan Love, I expect him to have more progression along with the rest of the weapons in that receiving core. I fully expect Dontavion Wicks and Jalen Reed at wide receiver both to emerge as the top guys within that unit. Just so much explosiveness within that offense, man. They're going to continue to be great, along with having Josh Jacobs, who I have him as an upgrade over Aaron Jones just based off his availability alone. Potentially, he can be more involved in the passing game as well, out the backfield too. So I'm excited about that. And defensively, them being able to move away from Joe Barry, who was an atrocious DC during his time in Green Bay, to Jeff Hafley, who was the Boston Colts head coach previously, I think that's a massive upgrade. And for Hafley to have the keys for a defensive unit, just have a lot of talent all across the board. Rashawn Gary, Jair Alexander, as well, Rasul Douglas. They have a ton of talent. And with Barry being in DC, he wasn't really able to tap in to that talent. And I fully expect uh, Halfley to fully unlock this team and make it truly elite within this league. So with the Packers, not only I have them winning the NFC, the NFC North, I could possibly see them going to the NFC Championship this year and potentially going to the big game as well. So I fully expect that from Green Bay. I expect a massive leap from that young Packers team this season. Next one, we're going back to the AFC. I have the Cleveland Browns in this tier still. Your defense is still great. Myles Garrett is an absolute game wrecker, one of the best players overall in the entire league. Secondary still great, pass rush still great. O-line when fully healthy still great. Receiving core, although Jerry Jeudy, I'm not that big of a fan of. I am a fan of Cedric Tillman. I expect a ton of progression from him this season as well. Amari Cooper is one of the best receivers in this league. I'm very high on him. Nick Chubb, while his injury, a lot of people are skeptical if he can fully bounce back from that. But if there was any running back that can bounce back from such a devastating knee injury, it's Nick Chubb, which he did do that post Georgia. Do not look up that injury he suffered versus Tennessee. That's horrendous. But I'm still a very big fan of Nick Chubb, and I fully expect this running game to still be high above water as well with his return. Stefanski is a very good play caller. I'm very high on him as a head coach overall in general. Jim Schwartz is one of the best defensive minds in this entire league, which because of that, and as well as the talent in that unit, they're still going to be very great as well. There's just one big thing, man, within that Browns team. One big thing, and that's with Deshaun Watson. If he can be average, be a top 18 quarterback this season, I could potentially see a world where they make the AFC Championship. I truly do. If they don't, then they're not really going to fully match their potential, their ceiling. So this whole season, just like last year, fully rides on Deshaun Watson. If he can stay healthy, one, and somewhat live up to his big-ass contract. So, yeah. But I still have the Browns as a true dark horse contender when they're fully healthy. Okay. Next team, I have the Super Bowl runner-up from last year, and that's the 49ers. Obviously, the elephant in the room, losing Brandon Ayuk potentially to Pittsburgh in that trade is huge. Not having a separator, which for the Niners, they're very top-heavy when it comes to wide receiver. Dibo, I'm high on as well, but he's not a separator in this league. Ricky Pearsall, I think he's going to be very solid as well at wide receiver. But again, the separation that Ayuk has for this team, I think that's going to be very crucial. And I think they take a bit of a step back compared to last year. But again, they still have the top end talent. They got Christian McCaffrey still. Trent Williams is still at the helm. Defensively, they still got Fred Warner, who's a mastermind in the middle of the field. Nick Bosa is one of the best edge rushers in the entire league. Going to be fully healthy. When they get Halafunga back, that's going to be very huge, especially for a secondary outside of Mooney Ward. That's very poor, really, really poor. I think the Niners are still gonna be within that mix of being amongst the elite. I think they're gonna win their division and still be in contention for that NFC title spot, Super Bowl appearance spot as well. But again, man, if the high end talent for a team lacking a lot of depth that like they do, if at least two of those guys go down, I could see this should be a disaster for this team, man. I truly do. But again, if they're healthy, if Perk continues to be solid as a quarterback. Kyle Shanahan is a phenomenal play caller as well. They still have him at their arsenal. They're going to be right back at the mix again for this year. All right, moving on. I have the New York Jets being in this dark horse tier. Look, man, they're gonna ride with Aaron, and they're gonna die with Aaron. Excuse me. Aaron Rodgers is back. Hopefully, he does not suffer the same injury. That was so that was crazy, man. But he's still fully back, being healthy. Again, a near 40-year-old quarterback coming back from an Achilles tear. That's huge. That's major, especially with an offense that is so top heavy and is lacking a decent play caller. I still don't like Nathaniel Hackett. I think he's one of the worst play callers in this entire league, man. But if Aaron Rodgers can at least match the production he had in his last year with Green Bay, being around a top 12 quarterback in the league, I think this Jets team can go pretty far, especially when you have a defense as good as theirs. All the 7 wins can damn near be contributed towards their defense. They're that damn good. The Williams brothers, Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, CJ Mosley, they're stacked. They are really, really stacked. And they're going to push this team. If the offense can be somewhat competent, they're going to push this team to a deep run. I truly believe that. But it just banks on their offense once again, man. If Rodgers can get the connection going with Garrett Wilson, especially alongside Michael Williams as well within their wide receiving core, Breece Hall is still going to be a beast outside the backfield. He's incredible. So I truly expect this Jets team to be a dark horse contender this year. I truly do. Out of the AFC. All right. The last dark horse I have to wrap this list up is the LA Rams. Sean McVay's back. Matthew Stafford's back, healthy again. Cooper Kupp's fully healthy. That's major. That improves their offense even more, alongside emerging young talents like Puka Nacua, like Kyron Williams out the backfield. Blake Cormer's going to have a big role in the running game, especially when Kyron Williams goes down as well. I really like their O-line still. They're going to be an elite offensive unit once again this year if everyone can stay healthy. Defensively, obviously, the big guy not there anymore, Aaron Donald. That's a huge loss. But when you look at their young core, when it comes to that front seven, Kobe Turner, which I think he should have won Rookie of the Year last year, he's phenomenal at D-line. Also drafting Brandon Fisk and Jared Verse from Florida State. They're great on that Florida State defense last year. And having Byron Young on the outside too as well. I think that's going to not fully make up Donald's absence, but it's going to be enough to where they're a very formidable front seven. And their secondary as well, brought a ton of veteran additions, like Darius Williams. He returns to the Rams. Cameron Curl at safety. Trey White. I think that makes for a very formidable secondary, which for the team last year, the secondary was complete trash. Complete trash. No Darion Kendrick, no Kobe Durant starting for them outside that corner. So that's a big upgrade for this Rams team. And I truly expect LA to be within that dark horse mix for this year as well. All right. Moving on to the towel fate. Oh, no. Oh, should I skip the Eagles for this tier? I have the Eagles in the dark horse tier. I know I messed something up. Sorry about that, y'all. I have the Eagles in the dark horse tier. The big hires they made with their assistants, getting Kellen Moore for the offense, for the defense, that's very huge. Brings a lot more veteran leadership to help out Nick Sirianni as well. Their secondary was a big a big sign of improvement. Getting Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean within the draft, that's huge. Also getting Garner Johnson back in that safety unit, that's big as well. I think they're going to be a lot better compared to last year, which last year they were absolutely god awful. So that's going to be a huge step up. Bryce Huff within their defense, that's big as well. I loved him in New York. Such an efficient pass rusher. He's going to help them out a ton on that end as well. Also having guys like Jordan Carter, getting more progression from him. That's going to be big for this defensive unit as well. And offensively, he still got the high-end talent. Jalen Hurts is back. A.J. Brown's back. Devontae Smith's back. Saquon Barkley was a huge get. He's going to be big for them in their run game last year. Jason Kelsey at the center position, that's a huge loss. But if Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata can both stay healthy, I think that's still going to be a very formidable O-line as well. One of the best units in the entire league by far. So for the Eagles, I expect them to win their division while also being one of the best teams in the NFC conference this year, amongst the top three for sure. All right. The last four teams in the league, and these are my title favorites. So let's kick it off by talking about the back-to-back champs, the Kansas City Chiefs. Mahomes is still here. Reed's still here. Kelsey's still here. Chris Jones still here. The loss of L'Jarius Sneed is huge, but Trent McDuffie's still here. They're going to be great once again. Xavier Worthy's going to have a big role within the wide receiving core. Rasheed Rice is going to have another year of progression as well. Pacheco's still a very good running back out the backfield. Their interior O-line is going to be a huge strength for this team. Defensively, George Karlaftis, Leo Chenal, they're going to continue to be great as well. They got most of the pieces together from from last year's championship winning team. They're going to be great, man. I don't got to talk about them much any longer, so I'll leave it at that. Next team, I have the Bengals actually being amongst the title favorites. Joe Burrow's back. That's huge, while also having an easy-ass schedule, the sixth easiest in the entire league. And when you're in a division in the AFC North, that's really huge. Also, they're high-end talent. They're back for another year. Jamar Chase is back. T. Higgins is back. Trey Henderson is back on the defensive side of the ball. Logan Wilson, NML linebacking unit is still back. Their secondary is a sign of concern, especially at corner. I do think Cam Taylor-Britt is going to be a stud within that unit as well. Emerged as one of the better young corners in the entire league. O-line is still a concern, especially their first-round pick, Amarius Mims, being out for these next few weeks with a pec injury. So that doesn't help them out as well, especially with their O-line being as bad as they've been for the past few years. But again, I think they're still going to be amongst the NFL's elite, especially when you have a healthy Burrow, fully healthy Burrow. And shoot, man. Again, they won 10 games with Jake Browning having a chunk of starts this year in Burrow's absence. They're going to be great once again, especially with their easy schedule this year. All right, moving to the NFC, the only NFC team in this tier, I have the Detroit Lions. Offensively, they're still going to be very dynamic. St. Brown, Laporta, Jared Goff, Gibbs and Montgomery as their running backs. J-Mo, if he can emerge as a secondary deep threat on the outside, that's going to be huge as well. Their O-line's still stacked. Penei Sewell, Frank Ragnow, that's still lethal, especially in the run game. They're going to be great offensively, especially when you have Ben Johnson as the OC for another year. That's going to be huge. Defensively, I think they're going to be more improved, especially in the secondary, getting Carlton Davis as well as getting Ennis Rakestraw and Terrion Arnold at corner in the draft this year. That's going to be huge for them. Their pass rush, I'm not that high on, especially, when it comes to the edge. I'm not really a big fan of the the Davenport signing. I'm really not that big of a fan, and I fully expect Aiden Hutchinson to take over and carry this pass rush unit once again. The run defense is going to be great, especially when you have uh, DJ Reader as their marquee acquisition on that D line. That was a fantastic get. He's one of the best run stoppers in the entire league for sure. So you put him alongside of Lee McNeil, that's going to be deadly, man. So for this Lions team, they pretty much ran it back with the same squad. We're also getting a ton, a lot better. And I'm expecting another great year for them as well. I really do. All right, last team to wrap this up. I have the Baltimore Ravens. I have the Ravens. Lamar's still there, fully healthy. Derrick Henry, those two together when it comes to their run game is going to be very dynamic, very potent. This year, I think that's going to be a huge talking point with this Ravens team this season. Defensively, Mike McDonald, that's a huge loss. He was what made this defense so great. Him being such a great mastermind. But Zach Orr, who previously was the linebacking coach, him being able to take on that DC role, I think he's going to be solid within that team as well, that defensive unit. Kyle Hamilton's still there. Marlon Humphrey's still there as well within that secondary. They're still going to be great, too. Hopefully Nate Wiggins can emerge as a secondary piece within that unit. The pass rush, they did lose Jadeveon Clowney, but they still got a ton of talent within that unit, especially from Justin Madubuike as well, to lessen the blow. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the AFC, that conference, I think the Ravens are still going to be the biggest threat to take down Kansas City. It's just a matter on when it comes to big games, can they maintain their identity? Can they stick to their game plan? I know over the past few years in the playoffs with John Harbaugh, they haven't been able to do that. So that needs to be a thing they need to tinker out for this year as well when they get down to it, down the line. But again, the Ravens, they're still going to be great, fully healthy. They're still one of the NFL's elite. And I got them being amongst the very few selective title favorites for this year as well. So that pretty much wraps it up. All 32 teams all in one video. We are about 8 minutes away from this being an hour and 30 for this week's episode. That's crazy. But I had a ton of fun talking with you guys, going through all the teams in the league for this upcoming season. And yeah, man, that's how it is. That's pretty much it. That's all I got for you guys. Again, if you guys have made it through this whole video, drop a like and drop a comment down below. Also subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are currently at 959 subscribers, excuse me. We got to hit our goal of 1K before the summer's over. Let's hit that pronto. Make sure to follow our other platforms, Instagram and TikTok at Lunch from Debates. And yeah, man, that's all I got to say. Hope you have a great day and peace.